The question is, do you believe, you personally, because we know you now, and we've talked about lots of sensible things you've talked about, do you believe that the solutions that he's proposing, things like rent control, do you believe that that's actually going to lower the price of real estate and make it more affordable in New York? I think you and I would probably both agree that rent control, rather than trying to increase the supply of housing by changing regulations and permitting and all of those things, that is ultimately the right answer, correct?
He's for building more housing. So my understanding is he has a double approach. There are already apartments in New York that he, as mayor, can have a rent freeze. Blasio did that for 3 years. But he's also embraced the abundance
but we saw
agenda.
what happened. Oh, the congressman, we saw what happened when de Blasio did that. We actually had less development in the city.
Bingo. I want to talk about this a little bit more because I'm seeing this all over the place. Oh, free this, free that. Zoran Mamdani, you know, like these. Oh, my goodness. I got to talk about it. I have to talk about it because I think not talking about it just creates even more people that want to buy into this sunshine and rainbows fantasy. As a matter of fact, I'm going to pull up another video that I want to show you guys of a young lady talking about the sunshine and rainbows fantasy, and she thinks like it's going to be like this extremely wonderful thing, but in reality, it ain't going to go that way. I want to play this clip of Zoran Mamdani and him talking about what he wants to do with this whole rent thing. And yeah, you're going to be shocked. Well, you probably won't be shocked by what he says because it's to be expected from someone like this. But check it out.
Starting on day one, we will expand the city's special enforcement programs, doubling fines for hazardous violations and tripling them for conditions that are immediately dangerous. And when a really bad landlord, like this guy, refuses to fix it, the city's going to step in, make the repairs, and send them the bill.
Okay, watch next.
If that doesn't work, the city's taking over the building. We're putting the worst landlords out of business.
He says, we're going to take over the building.
Yeah. So first you're going to freeze the rents. Then you're going to fine the landlords or make sure the landlords update their property, which they no longer have the money for because you froze their rents. Then you're going to fix it and fine them, so basically taxing them twice because you're sending them the bill for fixing it and you're sending them a fine on top of that. And if they don't come up with the money, now you're going to take it, allegedly. Can anybody take a guess if he has the power to do that? My goodness, man. My goodness. You just can't make this stuff up. If freezing rent was the solution to it all, don't you think rent would be frozen across this entire country and we'd live in this utopia of frozen rent across the board? Because it's never going to work and it never has worked. So check that out.
Okay, so Zoran Mamdani is most likely going to become the next mayor of New York City, and there's really no fighting it at this point, but at the same time, a lot of people still want this man to be the future of the Democrat Party and the ideas he has. Now, I'm somebody who supported Democrats in the last 3 elections, but I'm not somebody who's nearly as radical as this guy, and I'm here to say a lot of his ideas are really bad, and I'm going to do a series of videos on it, with the first one being pointing out why his rent control idea is going to destroy New York City and the rest of the country. Starting this off, I'm going to actually compare Zoran Mamdani to the man he probably never thought he'd be compared to, and that's Richard Nixon, because Richard Nixon was actually the biggest fan of rent control and price controls as president. When Richard Nixon was president in 1971 to help fight inflation, he had this idea to do a 90-day price control where the price of all food, wages, and rents could not go up. So he actually installed the biggest rent control nationally in the entire country's history for 90 days. It was a total and complete disaster, which actually led to shortages for pretty much everything, with the most notable example being meat, where there were actually butcher shops that had to close down because of it, because ranchers couldn't actually raise cattle anymore because they couldn't afford to with the price controls. And also it led to housing shortages as well, because people weren't selling houses because they couldn't actually raise the price, and that same thing went for rent as well. So there were more people homeless from it and more people starving. Price controls of all kind, be it on energy, food, or rent, always end up with the same thing. The wealthy tend to buy a lot more of it because they're able to, because the price is fixed. And at the same time, the suppliers don't have any incentive to actually produce more of it because they can't make more money from it. And it's been opposed by pretty much every economist, including Paul Krugman, who is one of the most left-leaning economists on the planet. And he's previously said the only thing worse than bombing a city is putting rent control on it. And rent control has never been good for New York City. It's been around for generations. What Zohan's proposing is nothing new. And in the 1970s, it was actually destroying the city, especially the Bronx, because landlords couldn't make any money due to rent control, so they actually had to burn down their own buildings for insurance settlements because they were just losing money having their building. And what not a lot of people realize is there's not actually that much money in being a landlord, where everybody sees these Graham Stefan videos and they see, oh, real estate, having land, renting it to people is how you print money, but they don't realize the average margin for a landlord in the United States and also New York City is only about 7%, which is a much lower profit margin than most other businesses. The issue with the rent control that Zohan Mandami wants is there is this huge problem where inflation will still go up, prices will still go up on things like insurance and maintaining a property, but at the same time they can't charge tenants more for rent. So a lot of property holders in New York City who are currently victim to rent control are just leaving properties completely dilapidated because there's no way for them to actually make money for them if they actually put any money into renovations. The number one group in New York City benefiting from rent control right now is actually the wealthy, because you have wealthy people who are finding these rent stabilized apartments and using them as second apartments while they're living in Miami. And there's also these families that have gained wealth over generations who are keeping these apartments under rent control, and they're paying maybe $500 a month for a $5,000 a month apartment. If you want a real reason to oppose rent control, Andrew Cuomo, when he was governor, put the strictest rent control in decades in 2018, and things have just gotten worse and shortages higher. But with that, I'm Charles Pearl, Red Blue News.
Yeah. So you just heard that from someone who admitted that they vote Democrat. That stuff does not work. Freezing rent will not work. All you're going to do is decentivize landlords and building developers to not build anything. The only way you can actually get the price down of homes is to build more homes. I mean, this is something that we learned in like elementary school. Supply and demand. If the supply is high, that means the demand is a lot lower, which means the price is lower because the supply is high. There's a lot of this item, so a lot of people can get it. But when the supply is low, as it is in a place like New York City, for a couple of reasons, one being, rent freezes and whatnot, and that's causing some landlords to just leave their buildings vacant. And if you don't believe me, I have proof, of course. The demand is high, and so the price is high. I mean, it's very, very simple. This isn't rocket science. If you want lower prices, incentivize landlords and project developers to build more homes. Duh. Get out of their way. Get out of their way. I mean, it's really that simple. Now, don't get me wrong. Some of these new homes that are being built out here are pieces of crap, to say the least. Boy, oh boy, the craftsmanship on some of these new homes is just like, I hate to be the person that just bought that brand new one. You know what I mean? It ain't the same. It ain't the same. We need some better folks building these homes for sure. But the fact still remains. Got to build more houses. Got to build more homes if you want to lower the price. Now, I want to get to this clip of this landlord talking about exactly what I was just speaking about, how some folks are just leaving their properties vacant. Check it out.
So this is one of 100,000 vacant apartments in New York City.
Wow.
I first made this video 6 years ago thinking, okay, the following year they'll renovate it and it'll be occupied, but 6 years later still vacant. And there's about 100 other apartments like this that are vacant because of this rent law that was passed in 2019.
What's the law?
So essentially this is a rent stabilized apartment, and the landlords can't increase the rent of the apartment because of the law that was passed. It's not in there, doesn't financially make sense. For example, the law used to be you can increase the rent 1/40th of the renovation cost, and now it's 1/116th. So if they put in, let's say, $100,000, they can barely increase the rent. So they're like, I'm not going to do that. It doesn't make financial sense. I'll just let it sit vacant. Let's say they did renovate this apartment and they increased the rent a little bit. It would still be rent stabilized and it would make their building less valuable.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
So what do you do? Can you even sell this place?
It doesn't have the most value right now. I'm sure it's at some point the law will change back and you'll be able to renovate it again. But right now, this is just going to sit vacant until the law changes. New York City becomes more and more unaffordable every single day because more and more apartments become vacant. People move out and then they're not being renovated.
Bingo. Bingo. If a landlord knows, hey, this tenant just moved out, I'm going in this property and it definitely needs to be renovated. But I can't charge more for the rent here if I spend, I mean, you got to think, renovating a place isn't cheap. You know what I mean? Like, we've all been to the hardware store, you know, some kind of project that needed to be done, and you start looking at the prices and you're like, oh, sheesh, golly. That's what a landlord sees on a daily basis, right? Flooring, countertops, walls, you know, paint. Paint ain't cheap, right? You'd be surprised at the cost of some good paint, right? The whole nine. I mean, if the bathroom needs to be completely redone, pulling toilets, sinks, tubs, showers, the whole nine. Like, if you need to redo something like that, I mean, you talking thousands of dollars, and that's just materials. We aren't even talking about the labor that's involved with it. Now, obviously, some landlords, you know, put a little sweat equity into things. They do things themselves, but there's a lot of folks who delegate that stuff, right? You're paying a property management group, or you're paying a repair guy, which that stuff ain't cheap either. You know, so when you're telling someone, hey, you can only charge so much for your product, now they're just not going to sell you their product. They're just, all right, well, we're just going to let this one sit. Just going to let it sit. Fine. Have at it. I can't charge more? All right, well, nobody can have it then. You just saw it right there in the video. A perfectly fine apartment. Well, it's not perfectly fine. It needs to be cleaned up and probably some renovations made. But a perfectly good space, right? There's space right there that people can live in, is not being used because of rent controls. And Zoran Mamdani wants to increase the rent controls. Because, of course, free rent, which ain't really even free in the first darn place. Somebody has to pay for it. Somebody has to pay for it. And when all of the rich individuals, like I just described earlier, where if you live in Florida 70% of the time, you think they don't know this information? It literally took me 30 seconds to figure that out. You think they don't know this stuff too? Like, they have people like tell them this stuff. They pay people to figure out this stuff for them. I just figured it out in 30 seconds. How can I avoid New York City taxes? Like, this is not complicated, baby. It is not complicated. If you think you're about to tax the rich out the wazoo, oh, well, it's just only 2%. Well, when you're already getting taxed at 50%, that's a problem. That's a problem. You know, well, I already took half your money, so I just want a little bit more. Bro, you already took half. What do you mean? I make $1 million a year, but on paper, I'm not a millionaire. I'm busting my behind 365 days a year while you know, I was about to say something crazy. I'm busting my butt 365 days a year, and you taking half my money, and now you coming back, and your reasoning is, well, it's just a little bit more. How about you take a little bit less? How about that? Oh, man, these folks will never learn, man. They will never learn. But y'all get in the comments. Let me know your thoughts and your opinions about all of this. This type of governing will never, ever work. Landlords have all types of expenses. Property taxes go up, right? Like I said, renovations, all types of things that come with on insurance, the whole nine. And now you telling them, like, I mean, some of their margins aren't very wide anyway. And so now that margin is shrinking. Property taxes go up. Insurance goes up, right? Oh, there's a renovation that needs to be done. Oh, well, renovation, forget that. Deal with that yourself, tenant. I ain't renovating that place. You know, so now you got a bunch of dilapidated properties that people are attempting to live in, and once they leave out, ain't nobody moving back in because they're not being renovated and the owner doesn't want to rent them out. So now you've made one problem even worse because you went from not having enough properties to even more properties coming off the market. It just makes no sense, man. If y'all tired of these liberals with these silly ideas, make sure you hit that subscribe button, all right? Stay safe out there. Peace and love. I'm out.